Patrick Lecture 250, Grace, Faith, and Deficit. And in week 2, we're looking at the concepts or how to apply those concepts or understand those concepts using Patrick Lecture 127, which is the 4 stages of spiritual evolution. The first stage is not knowing, which is not a space where you consciously work. It's the definition of not knowing. So stage 2 is awareness. It's described as the longest and most painful stage because you don't have step 3 awareness. Once you have awareness and understanding, you can elevate into knowing, which is stage 4. And then the process starts over again. It's a continual process. I like to give banal examples. Anybody who's ever ridden a bike knows that you may not be sure what to do for 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 weeks. And it is very possible to gain a sense of balance. How much time it takes you to do that depends on a lot of mind-hand coordination stuff. But you gain a sense of balance so that there's a knowing. And at some point, you know intuitively, instinctively, where your center of gravity is. You don't have to know the concept. And you know when it has tipped to the point of falling over. You prepare for the fall, the inevitability of the fall, instead of denying that and pretending that you can just lean the other way. Or if you can sense it coming, you lean before that happens. And that is the essence of any kind of balance. Preemptively correcting something that has gone out of alignment with where we desire to go. And this can describe the spiritual aspect of this process. So understanding is allowing, first of all, a consciousness around a sense that something's not right. Now, when something's not right, we have visions of doom and disaster and all the things our parents have told us would happen when we do things wrong. There's all kinds of child mythology, cultural mythology about being wrong, and you're going to have to work through that. And it's hard and it's difficult, and that's why this stage can be so long. But that something isn't right. Now, in the later stages, it could be a very tiny feeling, a sense that something's not aligned, something's out of place, knowing, but only in the stage of awareness. So we may know it's out of alignment, but we don't know why, and we don't know what we can do about it. We're gaining awareness of what that's about so that we can do that sometimes tiny, sometimes major correction back to balance, which is always dynamic, a little bit of back and forth at all times in life. So that's awareness. Understanding is fueled by the desire to find out. It's our intuitive and instinctive desire for survival, which controls our biological existence, but also fuels our spiritual existence. It symbolizes our spiritual desire to survive and flourish, not only survive, but flourish. So it's desire that leads us to questioning. We question paradigms. We question beliefs, established beliefs. These are not easy. These beliefs are encased with fear. They are encased with approval of others. When I first started pathwork, I did not talk about it. Number one, I didn't know how. And secondly, it's not popular. It goes against the culture. It goes against established excuses for why things happen the way they happen. It goes against the enjoyment of negativity that is passed off as everybody does it and isn't this fun, that I was beginning to feel ill at ease with. So it was only until much, much later that I was able to talk about it, and I'm still very circumspect because I look for a willingness on the other person to hear versus sheer curiosity about something that well, it's like saying, how are you? And they're not asking about your personal life history. They're just, it's a form of politeness. It's a way to connect. So I've learned to distinguish an offer to connect, no matter what the words are, from a genuine interest in a specific aspect of my life or how I approach things or how I understand things. And it's a balance. So that's the understanding. Once we have some understanding, we should go back to awareness and say, how's that work for you? Does that explain things? Does that, and we go back and forth and back and forth. So there's a circular aspect, if you will, a benign circle between awareness and understanding as we elevate in the spiral of development, which comes later in the month, when we elevate to a place of deepest understanding, which will lead to knowing. Now, so we check back with awareness, and that will allow awareness to increase, comes back to understanding, increases, goes back and forth. Take that sense of back and forth and improvement of each area to any aspect of your life where you have advanced. It's easier to see it when you've advanced rapidly or when you have a little distance from it. How did you grow up? How did you start to understand history? Did you understand geopolitics when you were 3 or 4? Or did you just name countries and learn cities and get a sense of the world? You didn't learn astronomy when you learned the planet. You just learned basic construct ideas about the planet, continents. Go back to those and notice the progression and how impossible it would have been to have used your later awareness and understanding way earlier in the process. This spiritual awakening calls for kindness on our part and some patience and humility, because we're going to find answers we didn't know were there, or worse, we knew they were there and we noticed that we didn't bother going to examine them until now. So you can have guilt, built up guilt about finally addressing something instead of patting yourself on the back and saying, okay, today's the day. Now, the awareness and understanding will at one point hit knowing. Knowing is not the final thing. It is just a marker point. It's a snapshot. It's an aha moment of these things have come together. And it's meant to unleash a new wave of awareness, understanding, and knowing. Okay? It is a momentary nuclear, psychic nuclear point, which is lectures 214 and 215, kind of complicated, but it's that term, psychic nuclear point. It's when the penny drops. A penny dropping on one issue does not satisfy your whole life, but it does free you. It does ease where your focus is and where your dysfunctional dynamics are, so that you've now got more time, more energy, more enthusiasm for using the same process in another area. So it's a, once again, spiral of development that can be fueled by a little success. So it's important to celebrate sometimes the small stuff. Knowing is a sense. It's a sense that you can't defend, but you can feel, and the feeling involves a little awareness of whether you're faking it. So once again, back and forth and back and forth. But at some point when you can rely on your knowing, if you will allow that it's knowing for the moment, that it is knowing that may change in future, but this is a ledge that you're willing to rest on. Think of it like climbing a very complicated cliff, and you find a ledge and you crawl onto it and go, okay, I can rest up here for a while. I have more to go. The ledge is not a solution. but you don't have to be working all the time. You can take a break. So that's what that knowing may give you, some relief and some pleasure and an ability to once again exercise in that area without all those creeping doubts and problems. You'll have tools for figuring out what knowing is. I trust the body. There's the gut sense of knowing, but you may experience it differently. You have to trust what you experience, trust and verify. You may be using terms like done, completed, grounded, and the terms are fine as long as they don't lead you down the false road of thinking, I don't have to touch the subject again. You may not. But the idea is that while the guide uses pseudo solutions a lot, he's trying to emphasize that solutions are always pseudo. There is no solution. To try to discourage a sense of, what am I done? Are we there yet? Instead of understanding that it's a journey. And there is no point in your life where you were done because you continued, if you continued. If you died that day, then you were done that day with this phase. But most people believe that there is an afterlife, that there is something else, that we are more than the body. And that would be the next step. And the guide may define it in certain ways. Other religions and philosophies, they'll define it. It doesn't pick the vision that feels right to you. The idea is there's a continuation, so you do the best you can today. And tomorrow you try again. And this is a spiritual version of today is the first day of the rest of your life. This moment of hearing these words, if it changes anything for you, is the beginning of the next phase of your life, an opening. Not a command, not a demand, not a structure or a tube that you have to go down, but an opportunity that you will need to take in order to create it. Or things will happen without your express permission. And that's where Patrick comes in and says, you did give permission. You gave permission for life to continue. And it will continue to give you challenges just to see if you'll take them. Now, what does this look like in real life? I'm a big fan of Pathwork's practical examples. In the past week and a half, I've had an epiphany. There's a long story attached to this that you don't need to hear. So I'm going to start with the moment of epiphany and go forward with what relates to this lecture on grace. In beating myself up for not already being there, bemoaning how hard it is, I was drawn to the question, I wonder how God grew up. That shocked me. And so I've spent quite a few days filling that out because I had never so much realized how we culturally anthropomorphize God, try to make him into the human image, fit him into the human mind and understanding. But what I realize is we don't go far enough in anthropomorphizing God. We are willing to anthropomorphize Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, and Christ, and other spiritual leaders, the Dalai Lama. We're willing to see them as spirits in development. It never occurred to me that God had a developmental arc. Now, to frame this, I don't have a problem with lack of time in spirit, Pathwork Lecture 112. I don't understand it, but I don't have a problem with it as long as I don't have to speak that language. So I'm going to use time in this example. God's developmental arc may have happened in a nanosecond. It may have been relative to any way a human mind can understand, instant. But I started to still want to focus on that, what was inside that instant. My pathwork justification for this is how the pathwork reiterates that what we experience on the planet mirrors a reality in spirit. It mirrors it badly, like a funhouse mirror, but it mirrors spiritual truths. It's hard to see through the distortion to the truth, and the distortion is meant to lead us astray because that's what we do here. We explore. So I tried to see past the distortion to grant God instant transformation, and yet take the microscope and say, but what would that have been like? And why would I do that? Because transformation exists on the planet. It has to have some corollary in spirit. And where I went with that is, how could God understand and create, if not a universe, a planet, with the capacity to grow, transform, and purify, if he didn't know it? And how does knowing happen? Whether or not it happens instantaneously, it happens through experience. And I decided to grant God the gift of having known what he was doing by creating us, by having experienced it. Not as crassly as coming to the planet Earth, because the process, the timing is all wacky. At the beginning of time, when nobody was noticing and nobody could witness. But here's where I went with that, and this to me is the important part, but I needed to preface it with all that. If God went through the transformation process and wound up back in unity, which is the plan of salvation, and felt the bliss of that, and realized that the bliss of his enjoyment of the unitive was supported by his experience of what wasn't unitive, and his explorations that led him astray, where he finally found unity. Why would he not grant that experience to us? Now, we don't see it that way. We don't see our lives as lasting 10 million years. And we see time. Told me 10 million years, I'd start keeping a chart or a clock. But with no time at all, what is possible that is actually happening is I am undergoing the same experience that God did. And let's say it's dragged out. Let's say it is felt more deeply or in different ways. So what? I wondered if maybe that was part of the gift. I gift you what I got because you're headed for bliss. And the struggles that you are having today will make that bliss so much more enjoyable that you will not care what it took. Not only not care, you will appreciate what it took. And you will look back, as we all look back, at aspects of our growing up in our childhood, and basically say we survived it and we made something out of it. And I maybe I wouldn't be the same person I am today without that. And that's what Pathwork has taught me to do with my life, is not disown it or beat myself up, but to accept how hard it was for me to learn to reach out to, for instance, Pathwork, and to really put my effort into studying them and trying them on and working with it. The pain of my life drew me to do that. And the pleasure I have received, I would not change my life because I don't know what else I'd be changing. It's the paradox of time travel. You think you're fixing something and you make it worse. I have abandoned that idea. And I have rather accepted that everything I am today is a result of what I experienced. And I'm not done yet. So by granting God the possibility of a transformational arc, I didn't make him more human. I kind of made myself more godlike, which made it easier for me to embrace what the lectures say, and many religions say, and philosophies, that I am God, not as a competitive element, which is the human game, but as an acceptance that I was granted an experience that will one day bring me back into a unitive that will allow me to join this creative force. And in my comedy routine sense of creation, the first thing I do is go out and help others, because boy, you can't believe what's going to be here. I'll help you get there, but without judgment and without fear and without trying to over control, but in acceptance. Where are you? What do you need? And not without a stopwatch, without a stopwatch in my hand, to just be loving and patient, which is how I feel now, in grace. I am not done. I am not approved of. I just am. And if I slow down, they'll give me some hints. And if I speed up, sometimes they give me an watch out, because I may be too eager. So this is my adventure with grace today, and I wanted to weave it in with awareness, understanding, and knowing. Grace is hard to understand. The infinite is hard to understand. Non-human realities are hard to understand. And that's why I was bringing in so many other concepts as support to this. Also, I was taught, many of my teachers were 50-50 pathwork teachers versus straight pathwork. The terminology is difficult. 50-50 was developed by Bert and Moira Shaw. A lot of my helpership teachers were trained in that, or by Bert and Moira, and I embrace it. It has a slightly different perception point of view. I would describe it as more holographic, which means that every lecture contains every aspect of the lectures. But of course, you would not be aware of that until you had spent time studying each concept. A little bit like the hologram, that where every pixel contains the entire apple, per se. And the miracle of the human eye is we can look at millions of pixels that are all apples, and we see an apple, a big apple. I don't know how that happens. It's a bit of grace. It's what the human being can do. I'll just leave it at that. But that's why I'm using the word holographic. And I invite you to notice in lectures where you do recognize other concepts. Some you are very comfortable with, and others you're still working on, and that would make it a particular lecture either easier or harder to digest. So, Pathfic Lecture 250, Grace, Faith, and Deficit, be a two-parter, continue into July. Thanks for listening. Take care.